Good morning, everyone. Today I'm releasing an emergency podcast to discuss the July 5th Greek Referendum, what it means to all of us, because we are all Greek in the situation. So, though I'm sure many of you at first may not care at all about the situation, but I think if you listen to the full extent of this broadcast, by the time you get to the end of this podcast, you will care about what happens in Greece today. And I'm also going to, near the end of this podcast, discuss what this means for gold and silver prices in the immediate future, because I'm sure a lot of you are reading about imminent short squeeze in silver and in gold that is coming. So I'm going to give you my thoughts about that as well. So please do stay tuned for the duration of this emergency podcast. So the reason I wanted to make this is because this morning in Asia, right now it's about 6 a.m. in Greece. And that means that the polls will open up in about 1 hour, as the referendum is set to take place from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in Greece. And then the results of the poll are supposed to be available a few hours before midnight Greek time. So normally I usually record podcasts very, very late at night, although I often release them in the morning, because I just don't have time to make them during regular working hours. And because a lot of times I'm working 13, 14, 15-hour days to bring you these podcasts, normally I try to relax on the weekends. But I think this topic is important and crucial enough that I am making this emergency podcast on this Sunday morning. So the only thing we know about the Greek debt situation is that everything you hear in the mainstream media is pure propaganda and lies. Because how many times in the past month, if you have been one that's been following the situation, you will understand exactly what I am saying now. How many times in the past month, in past couple of months, have you falsely heard from a mainstream media report, meaning like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, MarketWatch.com online, that a deal, the UK Guardian, that a deal has been done, followed by a banker-rigged HFT algo pumped stock market spike just hours or the next day after the mainstream media reported a fake deal-on narrative, and then only to be followed by deal-off stories of the truth hours or days later, in which the stock market spike disappears and the Western markets are again tanking. So think about the past month alone. I have seen dozens of deal-on stories from the mass media that all turned out to be pure propaganda. So you can see what they're trying to sell as the mainstream narrative, that they want a yes vote to pass for this Greek referendum. And again, what is this Greek referendum about? It's although the Greek government is saying and making sure to stress this isn't a vote on euro membership, in the end it really is, because it's a vote on the terms of any bailout of the bankers agreement, which if they vote no, then they will be very likely to exit the EU. So in the end, even though the primary step is really just a vote on terms of the bailout agreement, in the end it really is a vote on whether to stay in the EU or to exit the EU. So again, just going back to some of these mountains of propaganda, deceit, and lies brought to us by the mainstream media with the express intent of influencing Greeks into voting yes to the referendum today. I've seen headlines on MarketWatch.com online last week that said Tsipras, Greek Prime Minister Tsipras, wishes to remain in the EU. And in reality, it's funny because a lot of times when you look at the headlines, they don't jive with what the actual content of the article, because the mainstream media knows that a lot of people have short attention spans, have attention deficit disorder, and just read headlines, and that's what they think is the reality. So as long as they can get you to buy into their propaganda and their lies and the headlines, then they've accomplished their goal. But in reality, if you looked at all alternate independent media, Tsipras said that he wishes for Greece to remain part of the European economy, which is far different than the mainstream media lie that he wants Greece to remain in the EU. Because, of course, Greece is in Europe, so why wouldn't he want Greece to remain part of the European economy? Of course he would, because for Greece to recover, they need to be part of the European economy and trade with their neighbors and have export-import trade with their neighbors. So that is just pure 100% logic. But again, it's not saying that they want to stay in the EU, which is completely different, because then they are subject to the whims and the evils of the bankers if they stay in the European Union. So look at this, just check out this video, the link of which I'll post in this YouTube video description box if you're watching or listening to this podcast on YouTube and not on iTunes. And on the link you can find Tsipras is addressing not 100, not 1,000, but what appears to be easily more than 10,000 Greeks, and maybe even tens of thousands of Greeks that are chanting oxy, 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 which means no in Greek. And that was just Saturday night as they expressed how they are going to vote today in the referendum. So I even believe that a lot of the pre-vote polls at the mainstream media is really going to lots of measures to ensure the public sees and understands these pre-vote polls. They're saying the polls indicate the yes votes are slightly edging the no votes at this time. However, remember the mainstream media produced the same kind of poll garbage in the Swiss gold referendum back in November of 2013 when, or was it 2014? I can't remember if it was 2 years ago or 1 year ago, but in any event, that Swiss gold referendum, when the Swiss people forced a referendum vote upon the government, because it was actually the movement of the Swiss people that wanted to vote upon backing the Swiss franc with more gold. So when you think about it, that vote wasn't initiated by the government, but was initiated by the people. So what would that tell you? If they're initiating a referendum vote, then they want to pass that vote. But yet, so when the movement for the referendum to back the Swiss franc with 20% gold to up the gold reserves of Switzerland, it was overwhelmingly showing that the Swiss people are going to vote yes. But by the time the day of the poll actually arrived, due to the mainstream media propaganda, the media were reporting that a no vote was edging the yes vote. And when the vote happened, of course, then overwhelmingly, the final vote came in, it was 78% of Swiss voted no. So just from, in a few months, the Swiss gold referendum vote went from overwhelmingly yes to overwhelmingly no. And actually, I think it was not even a matter of months. I think it was just in a matter of weeks that the vote changed. So that shows you the dangers of listening to mainstream media propaganda and how it could brainwash people into doing the wrong thing. So, you know, one thing that was really troubling, which I discussed, and I'll actually put the links to these videos where I've been discussed that, because I made a series of 3 videos about that Swiss gold referendum vote before they happened. And I told you about the massive propaganda campaigns that were going on to help rig that vote and turn that vote from a yes vote into a no vote. And one thing I discussed that was extremely troubling to me was the fact that there were no exit polls. So that's extremely troubling to me again with this Greek referendum vote, because again it's been reported that there's not any exit polls as of yet, and without exit polls, votes are extremely easy to rig, or the outcome of the polls is extremely easy to rig. So as I tweeted earlier this week too, which some people didn't seem to understand, this vote today on July 5th to accept the banker terms for their own bail-in, because the bailout never includes the people, but it's just about bailing out banker profits. It is literally a vote for freedom or banker enslavement. A no vote is a vote for freedom, and a yes vote is a vote for banker enslavement. So again, just to be clear, a no vote means no to terms of the banker EU bailout for Greece, and yes means a yes to the banker terms for an EU bailout of Greece, which in reality, bailout means more austerity. So why would people vote for more austerity for themselves? Because again, there's a lot of propaganda where the MSM is saying a no vote will mean, oh, things are going to be terrible for Greek people. So although bailout seems like a positive word, bailout, or even bail-in for that matter when used, always means a bailout or bail-in for the bankers only and not for the people of the country. Greece has already been bailed out a couple of times. Let me remind you, lest you forget. But Also, let me pose this question. Is life better for any Greek citizens today because of these two bailouts that have already occurred, or just maybe for the very richest of the rich in Greece or the bankers since those bailouts? So, of course, most people know, or you should know, that because these bailouts are designed to transfer money, wealth, and savings from all ordinary citizens in any country, so even like the US bailouts were designed to transfer money, wealth, and savings from Americans to the bankers. So it's designed to transfer also not only the money and wealth from citizens to bankers, but also the excessive risks that bankers took. And when they lost down those risks, these bailouts are designed to transfer the risks to the people. So that's why we have austerity measures, because the bankers are not taking the losses for their excessive risks, but they're transferring the losses from those excessive risks to the people, which means austerity measures, which means stealing and robbing and looting their bank savings accounts, which means higher taxes for the people, taxes in perpetuity for the people forever. So just so the bankers can continue to fund their excessive, grossly greedy and arrogant lifestyles at the expense of all citizens of a nation. So the only reason anyone would ever vote yes for this referendum is if they want to vote for a future of zero hope and continued banker enslavement. It really is that simple. And not only is it that simple, but this what I'm telling you right now, it involves zero opinion, zero speculation, because we already have history to tell us what will happen if the Greeks vote yes for this July 5th referendum. Because, again, we have the history of the prior two Greek bailout agreements for the bankers already. And things have become markedly worse for all Greek citizens after these first two Greek bailout agreements. So why would anyone think that things are going to be better this time just because the mainstream media propaganda is telling you you must vote yes because a no vote will economically devastate you? Well, how much more economically devastated can you already be? So again, I'm sure that there are some Greeks out there that believe that exiting the EU will be worse for them and returning to the drachma will be worse for them. And indeed, it will likely cause further pain short term. But here is what the MSM is not telling you. Even though it will likely cause further pain in the short term, you're going to get much more pain if you vote yes anyways. And the key is for accepting this short-term pain, which could be very painful by exiting the EU, likely in the long run you have short-term pain, but the key is, Greek citizens, since you will have then shed the slavery shackles of the IMF and ECB bankers, you will then have control over your future and you can start to rebuild. You only need to look to Iceland that rejected the IMF, that jailed the bankers, and are now recovering to see what your future can be or could be. And had you not accepted the first two bailouts and austerity measures already imposed upon you, then you already would have been on the road to recovery right now, and this July 5th referendum would have been moot and unnecessary. So please keep that in mind. And don't vote yes today to extend the pain forever and never be free to recover, but just vote yes for some more short-term pain, which unfortunately is unavoidable, but at least at this point then you can start your recovery free of the shackles of banking slavery. So many of you may not even know that the terms of the first bailout, and this includes even people in Greece that may not know this, although I'm sure most of them do, because they are the ones in the world that are affected by this most directly. But the terms of the first bailout extend for another 16 years into the future to 2031. And the terms for the second bailout extend out for another 40 years into the future until 2054. So if you accept this third bailout for the bankers and the destruction of Greek lives today by voting yes, the terms of this third enslavement agreement is likely to extend out at least 60 or 70 years into the future, and that's what I mean by permanent enslavement. So there are bank shills and trolls among us that will urge you that returning to the drachma or, say, rejecting the IMF and the ECB and turning to China for financing will destroy Greece. But the facts of history are there in plain sight for all of us to see if we are only willing to see them. The terms of the first two bailouts have already destroyed Greece financially. I mean, I remember reading, I think it was in Bloomberg, that they say Greek citizens have cut their food consumption by 35% already due to necessity. That is shameful. Shameful for the bankers to impose upon Greek citizens, and it's unacceptable. So what's that saying? It's fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So what's the saying for fool me 3 times? So I urge all Greek citizens not to be fooled a 3rd time. Now, indeed, I believe that the vote, if close, will be rigged to return a yes vote, and that the only way to avoid a rigged vote is for the vote to be overwhelmingly no. But that being the case, there are still solutions. I'll discuss that at the end of this podcast. But the MSM, the mainstream media, has already ensured that everyone in Greece will believe the vote will be a close vote, despite overwhelming numbers of people in the streets of Greece shouting "Oxy, Oxy, Oxy" last night, or "No, no, no" to the vote today. So, unfortunately, I believe it's already been set in stone that the bankers are going to rig this vote no. Because if, that the bankers are going to rig the vote yes. Because if Greece doesn't agree to being slaves of the bankers today, even though the Greek government says this is not a vote to exit the EU, this means the exit will be inevitable, which will encourage Italy, France, Portugal, probably Spain and Ireland, and every other nation in the EU being screwed relentlessly by bankers to exit the EU. So interestingly enough, Reuters reported that the EU Commission said about this potential exit of Greece from the EU, quote, "Euro membership is irrevocable," end quote, which basically confirms that the bankers run the EU like the mafia. You know, the whole saying, you can join, but you can never leave. So, also very telling about the points I'm trying to make. We can turn again. I always say history provides all the blueprints for everything we need to know. So when I make predictions of what will happen and they do indeed turn out to be true, it's not like I have any kind of crystal ball. It's just that I have studied history, and anyone could do that. So Tolstoy made 2 quotes, Leo Tolstoy, about slavery. He said, one, quote, "Money is a new form of slavery and distinguishable from the old simply by the fact that it is impersonal, that there is no human relation between master and slave," end quote. And then he went on to say, quote, "The essence of all slavery consists in taking the product of another's labor by force. It is immaterial whether this force be founded upon ownership of the slave or ownership of the money that he must get to live," end quote. So I'm going to post a video I made in March of 2013. And for those of you that have not watched it, I urge you to watch it because it's very, very relevant to this podcast. And in that video, I said, no bank account in the world is safe from being cyprus'd. And again, I'll put the link to that video in the YouTube video description. And I urge people to exit the global banking system as completely as possible, which included withdrawing all savings from the system. And I said exiting the global banking system as completely as possible is the only thing that made sense at that point. And remember, this was in March of 2013. So I issued this warning not last week or last month, but 27 months ago. Yet, unfortunately, many in Greece totally ignored my warning, as was evidenced by people lining up at ATMs at 2 in the morning last weekend to try to take this advice and exit the system and salvage their savings from banker theft. But unfortunately, those that got caught will almost certainly be robbed by bankers in Cyprus with a yes vote today. Bankers, you may have seen, again, I'll put the link to this article in the YouTube video description. Bankers have already tabled a discussion for a 30% theft of all savings accounts in Greek bank accounts that hold more than 8,000 euros. So that's only 8,000 euros. If you have only 8,000, 9,000, or 10,000 euros, you can't afford a 30% theft of your savings. But this is what the bankers say is wealthy enough to qualify for stealing 30% of your savings. So this is exactly what Tolstoy meant, in that the ownership of the money is the essence of all slavery. And it's not just physical ownership of a human being, as most people typically define slavery. That is slavery. It is ownership of money that is the essence of all slavery. And if a banker can withdraw 30% of the cash from your savings account, even in light of your protest, that is ownership of your money that you falsely believed was yours, and that is enforcement of a slavery system. So recall that the lying, thieving banker stated in Cyprus originally that they were only going to steal 9.9% of all savings account. And then when people started to protest, they changed that and they said the very worst case scenario would be that they would have to steal 15.2% of your savings. Again, this is all factual. This has all been historically documented. You can Google this. As long as they haven't purged it, because I tend to save headlines and articles because I know the bankers purged a lot of the stories about their theft and about their robbery. So I think you can still find these stories though. But you know what the final verdict was? Remember, in Cyprus they said we're only going to have to steal 9.9% of your savings of all accounts in excess of 100,000 euros. So fast forward until today, and they're saying 8,000, not 100,000, 8,000 euros is sufficient for them to steal 30%. And what did they end up stealing? A lot of people probably have already forgotten, so I'll remind you. They end up stealing nearly half, 47.5% of all Cyprus savings accounts in excess of 100,000 euros. So what does that mean if they're proposing right now? They're putting into the ether of the Greek society that they're going to have to take 30% of your accounts over a mere 8,000 euros. What will the final theft be? Because remember, in Cyprus, they originally said only 9.9%, and they ended up stealing nearly half of all Cyprus savings accounts. So if they're starting this proposal of 30%, what will the final verdict be? Will it be 80%? Or why not even steal everything, steal 100% of all accounts? So for those people that are still considering voting yes, because the polls are going to open up very soon to this Greek referendum, is this really what you want for your future? No hope for recovery, no control over your own money, and relentlessly being subjected to banker theft forever. So consider that I've heard many people say that the most stable banking system in any nation is Switzerland at the current time. Think about that. Think about what that means. This is why I say we are all Greek, that this is really important to all of us. If people are saying, and you can get a consensus from a lot of economists, that Switzerland has the most stable, best banking system right now in not only the EU, but many people say this in the entire world. This best banking system of any nation is currently producing 10-year government treasury bonds at a negative yield, meaning they're guaranteeing you a loss on your investment. This is not even taking into account the inflation adjusted terms. So it's excessively negative when you're going to take into the account inflation over those 10 years. And they said this is the best banking system in the world. So that is why everyone should see that this is the result of the best banking system in the world. Everyone should be massively afraid for what is coming down the pipe in the next 12 to 24 months, possibly even within the next 6 months. It should take as much effort to control their own money and to not allow bankers to enforce slavery upon us by allowing them to control our savings. How do we do that? We keep our savings in their banks. So here's the solution. How do you control your own money? Well, it's been reported this week that Greeks are turning to Bitcoin now to try to get the remaining savings out of Greek banks. But I believe there's a better solution than even Bitcoin, because as JP Morgan Blythe Masters has joined Bitcoin trading platform Digital Asset Holdings as the chief executive, one has to be very wary of the tentacles that the giant vampire squid, meaning the banking cartel, is imposing upon Bitcoin, because they're clearly entering Bitcoin trading platforms right now and trying to get some control over those trading platforms. But again, my solution has always been the same. My narrative's not changed for over a decade now. The solution is to change counterfeit paper, plastic, and digital fiat banker currencies into the physical gold and physical silver that is the people's, we the people's money. There are two different kinds of money in this world. Banker slave money, which is every paper, plastic, and digital fiat currency in existence today, and people's freedom money, which is physical gold and physical silver. Yes, I do realize that gold and silver have been in a 4-year downtrend now, but the crystal clear advantages to holding physical gold and physical silver, by the way, and, which Greeks are realizing, by the way, right now, have been clear since I launched my company in 2006. And in fact, we're clear even back earlier than that in 2001. But in 2006, when we first started telling our clients to buy silver at $9 an ounce and gold at $5.88 an ounce, our early identification of this trend has allowed our Crisis Investment Opportunities newsletter to have a yield since its inception up until June 30th of 2015, just a few days ago, of more than 58.2%, which far exceeds the returns of the US S&P 500 over the same time period. So as for those of us spreading truths, like the truths contained in this emergency podcast, bankers will up their attacks against us, hiring people to troll us and even employing bots to automatically troll us. We're even seeing this in China because for those of you that have been hearing, oh, you can't lose in the Chinese stock market, well, it just crashed by more than 30% from its peak in June. So in 1 month, the Shanghai Stock Exchange is down by, I believe it's anywhere, I know it's over 25%. I think it's actually maybe over 30% in 1 month, which anyone would define as a crash because that's 1 month. And even the Chinext, which is the equivalent of the US tech stock index, NASDAQ, has crashed by more than 35% since June 3rd, by more than 35% in a month. So, you know what the Chinese state has rolled out? They're saying, oh, who are these manipulators are manipulating it down? Because guess what? The Chinese state was the one that convinced millions of Chinese housewives to open up accounts that had zero experience, saying you can't lose. Here, continue to prop up our stock market. And you know who the ones that have been wiped out, unfortunately, again, are the people that can least afford to lose any money, have had their savings wiped out in China. So these were like Chinese fruit vendors, Chinese housewives that had zero experience, said, hey, I can't miss out on this train that continues to rise and I can make a fortune. They got in, they got wiped out in just 3 weeks, which is crazy. So to all those spreading truth out there, I warn you not to engage these trolls because they'll spread vicious lies about us, but there's nothing gained from arguing with a liar except wasting your precious time. So even if you have employees disseminating most of your social media, as I do, say on Twitter, instruct your employees not to waste their time engaging these trolls because they may actually even be non-human, because there's a lot of computer bots trolls that will try to engage people to, you know, basically deploy ad hominem attacks. So people, you know, those are the kind of attacks that people will reply to saying, oh, you're so stupid, how can you be so dumb? Because people want to defend themselves, but they're not worth your time because a lot of them probably aren't even human. So, and especially if they're spreading lies, what they're trying to do, because you can counter with facts and they'll just keep saying more lies and more lies, just block them. They're not even worth your employees' time. So tell your employees that, because I've told mine, just to block these people. They're not worth our time because we're too busy trying to disseminate the truth. So, of course, does not mean blocking people that disagree with you. They simply disagree with you and are not saying anything that are lies or not absent of any logic and just engaging in ad hominem attacks, and have your staff engage them as well, as engagement will lead to further understanding for everyone. But be very careful not to waste your time with liars, as their only purpose, human or automated, is to waste your time. As for us, all facts about all our services are clearly stated on our fact sheets at SmartKnowledgeU.com, and we don't try to conceal our mistakes either, because if you read our fact sheets, we openly speak about them because we certainly are human. We have made mistakes in the past, and if you've not committed to any mistakes in over 9 years of operation, because we've been in operation for over 9 years, then I would even say either you're lying or you're a central banker that's been rigging all markets and feasting off your market manipulation. So if you haven't committed any mistakes, you're just a central banker that's manipulating all these markets. But while it is true that gold and silver have struggled for 4 consecutive years, we've been in cash or short gold and silver most of this year because we have learned from our mistakes in the past. So in fact, we recently closed out a silver short position last week at an 18% profit. But does that mean we believe, now I'm going to get into how how I believe the Greek Brexit situation will affect gold and silver markets. Do I believe that silver will now rocket, as I'm sure many of you listening to this podcast are well aware of? Some of the stories of silver shorts are about to get squeezed right now. In the immediate term, no, I'm not on board with that. I would obviously love to see silver skyrocket and gold skyrocket in the immediate term, but I don't believe in the immediate term this is going to happen, because even though we closed out our silver and gold shorts this past week, it doesn't mean that there cannot be further gold and silver weakness this month. And actually, I believe right now, though, of course, in gold and silver markets, you have to look at it every day. So our opinions can change from day to day, and when they do change, we of course let our subscribers know how our opinion changes. But it does not mean there cannot be further gold and silver weakness this month. So we just want to emphasize that. In fact, I believe that there probably will be further gold and silver weakness this month. But let me tell you my reasoning behind this, because every time we've seen gold and silver hit, or actually, we've seen gold and silver hit every time after the mainstream media has falsely reported a deal-on story for Greece in the past several months. Therefore, if bankers rig a yes vote, as I believe they will, then they will definitely use this opportunity to take gold and silver lower. Furthermore, Citibank has gone crazy in their silver short positions over the past few months. So just in this year, they've gone crazy. So a massive silver short squeeze would mean the death of Citibank. And although this would be a good thing, this means that the central bankers will do everything in their power to prevent this, as Citibank is a favored child of U.S. central bankers. As we stated all the way back in 2008, we stated that the banks that are not the favored children of the U.S. central bankers, like Lehman Brothers, Merrill Lynch, Bear Stearns, would be allowed to collapse. And then the bankers that are the favored children of the U.S. central bankers, J.P. Morgan, Citibank, Goldman Sachs, will not be allowed to collapse. And that's exactly what happened back then. There's no reason to think that this will be any different this time around. So they will do everything in their power to prevent a silver short squeeze, which would mean the death of Citibank, as even if that requires raising margins 5 times in 9 days, as they did to artificially engineer collapse in silver prices back in 2011 from $50 an ounce. So if by some miracle a no vote is reported later tonight, which I think is the most beneficial for everyone in this world, not just Greeks, then gold and silver may initially spike on this news, but the bankers will then throw everything they have in the interim to make sure that even if a spike does arise, that this spike dies a quick death. As the last thing they want is soaring gold and soaring silver prices with talk of an imminent Brexit. So either way it goes, I just don't see the favorability, unless the bankers just, of course, the other option is they completely lose control. But in the meantime, I don't think they're going to completely lose control in the immediate term. So in the immediate term, I see this as a lose-lose situation. In the long term, gold and silver still look great to me for huge spikes in prices. And in fact, the 4-year downtrend in gold and silver prices and fake fiat currencies will become irrelevant in future years. Mark my word, as I have been telling all my clients for a long time, that they should measure their physical gold and silver holdings not by fiat currency, which will cause you stress, but by weight in ounces only. And I believe that this statement will become self-evident even to those confused by this statement today, because they believe the only thing that matters is the fiat currency prices of gold and silver and not ounces. That this statement of mine, that you should only worry about the ounces, will become self-evident within just a couple of years. And again, this is how Greek people can revolt against a yes vote to stay in the EU, if indeed that is what happens, which I think is likely at this point, unfortunately, because again, you know that I would love to see a no vote prevail. But if a yes vote prevails, they can still reject the vote as illegitimate and rigged if it's a close vote, and they can take control of their own savings. As I've told everyone should do, go back and watch the no banking account is safe from being Cyprus'd video that I'm posting a link, because that tells you how to exit the system. And if all Greek people had done that, then it wouldn't matter what the vote was today. because they wouldn't have their savings in bank accounts for the bankers to now steal 30, 40, 50, 60, 80% of their savings as they're going to do if the yes vote prevails. So, okay, thanks for listening. For those asking about the launch of our Smart Wealth Academy, because we've had quite a number of inquiries, we really do hope to launch it by the end of this month. So thank you for your patience. Continue to stay tuned. For those that don't know what it is and want to know what our Smart Wealth Academy is, merely come by at SmartKnowledgeU.com and download our fact sheet for more information. Remember, inform and inspire. Get up, stand up, as Bob Marley said, and always remain intensely curious. Thanks for listening. Until next time, so long.